Hello, good morning, everyone. We're about to start this event. Please do take your seat, take your coffee, take what's needed. I'm delighted to have the chance to introduce this session. My name is Matt Toombs. I'm part of the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. Our Minister Shank sends his apologies for not being able to join. It's been a lively week, as you might have seen in UK politics. Welcome to this session of the Global Green Industrialization Forum. Many thanks to EQG and UNIDO for hosting us. And well done to all of you for making it on what looks set to be the UK's hottest ever June day. It's quite an environment for holding London Climate Week during. But this is a great chance to talk about industrial policy. It's really there back at the centre of global decision making, and for very good reason. As we all know, industrial emissions count up to 40% of global energy-related CO2, and it's about 37% of global energy use. And the choices that are being made now in terms of how countries power and build their energy systems will affect competitiveness, it will affect jobs, and it will affect emissions for decades to come. At the same time, global supply chains, critical minerals, all kind of at the core of decision making, and countries are asking the question of how we build the systems for the future, for powering our industries in the future that don't build in the emissions of the past. And that's why it matters. This isn't an abstract concept of green industrialization. This is a real economic issue that is about jobs, it's about competitiveness, and it's critically about development. The UK's been strongly involved and invested in this agenda for a long time, right the way back from COP26 and the launch of the breakthrough agendas, which were focused on key industrial sectors, so steel, cement and concrete, hydrogen, road transport, buildings, and that was an attempt to bring together parts of the global community to provide some structure around the interactions that were needed to support partners working together on what collaboration can mean in terms of concrete delivery. I'll just say a little bit about what we're doing in the UK at home in this agenda. This is hugely important to us. The UK's seen significant reductions in our own emissions from industry, 60% since 1990. We're investing some real public money behind this. So we set up a national wealth fund, which has £5.8 billion investing in industrial sectors. So hydrogen, CCUS, ports, gigafactories, green steel. We've got some long-term funding, £22 billion of long-term funding for the carbon capture clusters in the northeast and the northwest. And these have already mobilised £8 billion of private finance. Internationally, we're using our public finance to strongly support this agenda. We have a £6 billion international climate finance commitment for the next 3 years. We just this week published our international climate finance strategy, which shows that support for industrial decarbonisation is one of the core pillars that we'll be working with countries on in the years ahead. So hugely important to us. But things have changed on the landscape, and since COP30 in particular, new coalitions have formed. We've seen many more partners, developing countries and others with real ambition within this space. That has greatly increased the capability and capacity, but it's also meant there's quite a crowded space. And the Belém Declaration gave us an opportunity to really take the breakthrough agenda and to make it internationally owned and to bring more coherence into this space. And that's why we support the Global Green Industrialization Agenda as the next step, which is due to be launched in COP31. So its purpose isn't to duplicate what others are doing, it's there to enable, to help all of those partners involved in this navigate the systems of international support and to focus on delivery. The things that we need to do are really clear. We need better information for investors and for decision makers. We need better platforms, stronger platforms for collaboration and partnerships to be built across the delivery system. And we need support that helps countries move from ambition to concrete delivery. And that's why the discussion matters so much. It's why it's so good that we're going to hear today from collaborators and partners from COP30 presidency, from COP31 presidency and COP42 presidencies, and from Germany as leading partner on industrial decarbonisation, as well as UNIDO, the proposed secretariat of this. So for the UK, our message is simple. We want to be a practical partner. We want to bring the things that we can to this agenda, the finance, the innovation, the expertise, the convening power. We want to focus on where UK capability can make the greatest contribution. And we strongly support the framework that's being developed through the DGIA and see UNIDO as uniquely placed with its expertise to sit right at the core of this agenda and see this as a way of building on all of the work that's happened over many years, including through the breakthrough agendas. So I'm delighted to hand over to Diana, Holdorf, the Executive President, Pathways from the WBCSD. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great, Matt, thank you. Thanks so much, Matt. This is a pretty remarkable kickoff to the green industrialization events that we're having today. Such a critical theme. Matt, you set the stage for that. We're going to have some speakers in a moment from UNIDO who's really championing this under the UN agenda. Much better. So, kicking off the green industrialization discussions, which is really critical. It's great to see it featured here. Just a couple of key points. World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We are a leading partner for the action agenda, mobilizing business through that and the Marrakesh Partnership into these discussions, which is key because business investment and business action is exactly where green industrialization lines up with the policy and the leadership that comes out of the nations leading the climate action agendas and from UNIDO's leadership at UNEP. Just some quick highlights to reinforce the importance of this from the 2026 Business Barometer that just came out with over 570 companies weighing in over 50 markets. 68% of all of these business leaders are anticipating an even less stable operating environment over the last 12 months, probably not surprising. But 85% of them continue to point to the importance of stable supporting policy to really address the climate action and investments they're making. And only 4% of those saw a decrease to their capital expenditure investments related to climate resilience, and climate investment. This is not exactly what we would have anticipated coming into this, but when you think about the impacts of the actions and investments that are needed, it really makes more business sense than anything else. And this is that huge opportunity that we have for implementation of the policy actions that these leaders here that we're going to hear from are really helping to drive forward. First, we're going to hear, however, from Rana Gonhan, who's the Director of the Division of Energy and Climate Action at UNIDO and really leading on this agenda. Ron, over to you.
Thank you so much, and it's really a great pleasure to be here today. And Matt, thank you for UK's great partnership with UNIDO in working on these topics. But thanks also to all the countries gathered. Brazil, Germany have all been instrumental in driving this agenda forward. Now, let me start by just maybe reflecting on what was the major moment, especially in COP30, that helped in driving the green industrialization agenda. I think what we've established in COP30, the shift from a discussion around industrial decarbonization to a shift to talk about green industrialization, because there are a lot bigger economic and development opportunities behind the energy transition, especially for the global south or developing and emerging economies. And that has been really majorly the shift in the discussion. So putting on the spotlight not only the decarbonization of heavy emitting industries, but also green tech manufacturing and decarbonization of light lighter industries that are going to be instrumental as well for Turkey's push to electrification. Now, why are we, creating a global green industrialization agenda? I think that's important to note because indeed there are a lot of initiatives in the landscape, and we certainly do not intend to duplicate. And I'd like to round it up to 4 reasons and key objectives why we need a global green industrialization agenda and what we're trying to solve for, essentially. First, there is a need for a global tracking of the state of green industrialization globally, not only from a technology, finance, but even from a supply chain perspective, and keeping that reporting regular, and bringing it to a moment annually where we also bring the industrial leaders to discuss that. And this is what we're putting forward as a core pillar of the Global Green Industrialization Agenda on data and convening. And, together with the countries supporting this, we will be convening the Global Green Industrialization Dialogue annually ahead of COP as a moment for us to take stock of the progress. The second need for the Global Green Industrialization Agenda, obviously, we keep on talking about the shift from ambition to implementation, but that shift requires an alignment that is not a simple one. We need to align global challenges and ambitions to regional roadmaps and realities to actually national implementation plans. And basically for that, we had last year the ambitious also change of the action agenda by Brazil, linking it to the global stocktake, but also putting together a lot of plans to accelerate solutions. So how do we keep this agenda also alive in terms of bringing the right new plans for to accelerate solutions, transitioning those that have fulfilled their obligations, but also ensuring that the action agenda is not only about private sector actions. Government have a strong also role to play and have voluntary contributions they can bring. As an example, I'd like to mention the Green Public Procurement Pledge that we at UNIDO have been working on as part of IDDI. So we do see a stronger role for public action, but also a connection between the public and the private. The third one is in fact, working on driving the consistency of this agenda and making sure that we just don't look at it, with fragmented initiative approaches. And this is the continuity we see here, from one COP to the other, but also circling back to the UK hosting the next G20. This is the consistency we're trying to bring, because there's multiple, and sitting in a UN organization that's in the middle of all of this, whether it's a climate change related, development related, or public policy related. There are many cycles, and then by joining them, we are going to be able to accelerate these solutions. So I hope, this is essentially what we're going to focus on within the Secretariat that's currently being formed. The generous support of the UK by transitioning the breakthrough agenda is going to give us an initial kick to revamp the Secretariat. But we actually invite, and we're in discussions with most of the countries, but also the private sector, to look into how would they also like to reinforce the Secretariat to help in connecting. So I do invite you, if you're a country, reach out if you want to be in the oversight group. That's going to be essentially the leadership group driving the agenda. And if you are a country or a private sector or a think tank and would like to contribute concretely to some of the work streams, we would also welcome, resources that would support us. So yeah, I'd like to end it more with this call to action for you to join us on this journey. And I turn back over to you. Thank you so much.
So much for UNIDO's leadership here. We're going to turn now to what has to be one of the most remarkable panels of this week during London Climate Action Week. We have with us a woman who needs almost no introduction, Anna Toma, the Executive Director of COP30 and architect of the Bellon Declaration, which really set the stage for the green industrial discussions that we're having here today. We also have State Secretary Jochen Flassberg, who's the Federal Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety for Germany, and the co-chair of the Climate Club, along with Turkey. So a very strong leading voice on green industrialization and business country leadership. We have as well Carla Silva Fijo, who's the special advisor to the COP31 high-level champion, to talk about how this then feeds into the COP31s, bringing together what came out of Belém. And I think really excitingly to take us forward on this agenda and show the multi-year progress we'll look to make. We have His Excellency Hassan, who's the State Ministry of Industry for Ethiopia, COP32 President Nation. I am going to turn to State Secretary Glassbreath first, because like everyone, there are many competing agendas this week. His agenda is tight, and we're looking forward to hearing your input. Please, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, everybody. Thanks a lot, now. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. As a London Climate Week just came in this morning. I'm very excited to start my day here with this important topic. I'm also excited to sit here together with representatives from 3 co-presidencies. And as we have said already, so many good things about Brazil and also Turkey and Australia. I just want to highlight, we are really, really impressed how early Ethiopia started, how engaged, how committed you are. Congratulations. So I think this is really a good bridge building from Belém over Antalya to Addis Ababa. Let me start by saying, if I look at the progress that is needed to reach our climate targets, it's not so much the energy sector. I think we can make it. The renewables are anyway the most cost-efficient way forward, specifically for those who are still investing in the energy supply, but also others who are thinking about restructuring. We have the tough process. So I'm quite confident we get on track there. The sector where we should have, some very short thought is, I just mentioned it, we are not discussing it here, LULUCF, and then these are the two sectors. And industry is in a way more complicated than the others because we are immediately in an area of competitiveness. But it is needed. If we don't get into the decarbonization process of our industries, we will not reach our targets. And therefore, we have to look at the technologies. I think we are quite advanced in those sectors that have been mentioned already also by the minister, steel, concrete, but I could also add some others like parts of quite substantial parts of the chemical industry. We know the technologies, but they are not cost competitive. That is the difference to the energy sector. So that is an area where my most favorite word of the Paris Agreement comes into place, and that is mutual. But it's difficult to organize it because if you want to make progress, you have to develop national or regional policies. We did it in Europe with the carbon pricing being essential element of our climate policy to reach our target. But it's a tricky instrument. And I was part of the reforms of our ETS, and then the price climbed up to 60, 70, 80, 90, sometimes also 100 euros. And this is something that cannot be digested by industries in competitive. Then we started with the CBAM, which is disliked in most parts of the world. So it's not the instruments where we all get the best friends, although we are. Yeah, but it is criticized, and that makes it even more relevant to look at ways how to get level playing field, how to work together mutually, how to exchange experiences, and how to also, not that we need to have the exact same instruments, but they should be around the same. And that was the idea of the climate club that was launched by Chancellor Scholz to bring together those countries who are interested exactly in this area. And with a view to make instruments to protect our national or regional industries not needed then. That's the idea of the climate club. And as you said, we are very proud at the moment to co-share it with Turkey. We still hope that Brazil joins us. And it is some kind of very detailed work, but also with a political attitude. So, for example, in Berlin, we launched the global pledge to increase the climate-friendly share of steel and cement on the global markets. And in Antalya, we will do a review. So it's not just talking, it's also walking the talk, how to and see how to make progress. So already coming to the end here, looking at the global greenhouse gas emissions, it's still the case that sadly enough, 80% are coming from the G20 countries and plus some. And it's at the same, at the one side, it's not a good message that so few countries cause such a big burden for the whole world. But on the other side, it's also a key to find solutions, because we need the cooperation between those countries and some other countries on their way to jump up in their industrialization to find ways to work on the decarbonization industrial pathway.
Super, thank you so much. This point of the multi-country partnership and mutuality is key. It's super important for business and industry as well, because business may sit in a country, but is part of the global value chain, and it depends on these types of policies to drive the investment. So the linkage is very, very clear. Anna, Tony, I'm going to come to you next as the key architect behind the Belém Declaration, bringing the global green industrialization onto the COP agenda so centrally. Over the last, well, really 2 years now, what have you seen that we should be applying that is making it work, that we can take into COP31?
So thank you. Good morning to everyone. To take we always friends and we always cooperating, always. But let me say thank you also for the UK government, for the German government. Really nice to be with COP31 and COP32. I think it already shows the difference, how we're going to go forward. I think this Troika issue is becoming not only during the COPs, but together here, the climate week is really, really important. I think the Belém Declaration on Global Green Industrialization, and I think our friend from UNIDO mentioned that it's a major breakthrough, especially from a country, a developing country perspective, because we're not only talking about decarbonization, as I said, we're talking about green industrialization. So we're talking about development, we're talking about growth, which is really what brings, I think, developing countries, emerging countries to the table. We all want, obviously, to industrialize, to obviously look at growth in our country. So being part of an agenda that has to do with development is really, really important. And I think the idea to bring all the initiatives, the breakthrough agenda, the climate club that was mentioned, and all the other action agenda together to reshape it as a growth and a development agenda makes all the difference for developing countries' perspective, and therefore is more attractive so to join. And I think what we tried, and I see Bruna Cerqueira here, that was the coordinator of the action agenda for Brazil, and that brought all those initiatives together with the private sector, with with everybody together, is to show that we need to look at places that really has the common goal that we are sharing. So we know as developing countries that we want to industrialize, but we can only industrialize taking into consideration the problem of climate change. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that together. And green growth is the only way forward. So I think the declaration is the best signal of ambition from developing countries' perspective. That shows that's not. It shows that we are ambitious with our NDCs and our plans. We wanted to do it, and we needed to do that together. And I think by bringing that perspective, it's not against anything. It's just the opposite. And that's why, Peter, that Flashby is not here to joke with him. For Brazil, one thing that we care very much is we don't like the word club. Because club is something that's close, It's just some people can be part of. We like the open coalitions. So that's why, the Declaration on Global Green Industrialization is an open coalition, as was said, open for everybody that wants to join. And that is essential because it's something that the positive outcomes we are going, I think we have around 50 countries and organizations that have already endorsed, and we need more because we needed to look at the comparative advantage that we all have in order to industrialize. And yes, it's competitive, but doesn't need to be a competitiveness in which we cannot express our comparative advantage. So from Brazil perspective, obviously the bio solutions, the bio incomes, the power shoring, where Brazil does have a comparative advantage with nature resources that we have, is fundamental for us. But maybe a country that doesn't have the nature resources that we have, even if they want, they would not be able to do the industrialization that they want. So I think it's a win-win agenda. It's an agenda that we are totally committed to. The Ministry of Industry in Brazil has been leading with COP30, and we look very much forward, continue this work with COP31, COP32, and definitely with UNIDO and the business tech. So thank you so much.
So much, and it's great to hear the reinforcement of competitiveness and growth coming through. What we've seen is the successes of the Belém Declaration and the powerful partnership with UNIDO in this drive for the green industrialization and the open invitation continuing to be part of this. And this is what really brings us into the next step on the green industrial work started here and really focused on Belém. I do want to acknowledge also we've got a guy from the ministry in Australia that's been partnering obviously very closely with Turkey coming into COP31. So just to say thank you also for Australia's leadership. But Carlos, I'm going to turn to you as the COP31 high-level champion. The high-level champions really play a key role in bridging between private sector, non-state actors, and the formal COP agenda. Share a little bit about how you see the green industrialization, this green growth agenda coming from Belém into Antalya.
So thank you very much. Good morning, all. I'm very happy to be here in this panel today and I share initially warm regards from the COP31 high-level champion, Mr. Samet Aribash, and because of conflicting agendas this week. So I feel very kind of under pressure to representing here, but addressing this, it's and listening to the previous speakers, it's something that we need to understand that we were talking about the Belém Declaration, but one word that I think that Brazil brought last year is the multi-realm world. So it's something that we really need to embrace, and we really need to bring forward, because as it has been said, we are now Turkey. We are now looking this COP as the COP for implementation. So we are not discussing the global stock take, we are not discussing specific financing procedures. So we need to really move into implementation and to deliver. And when we started this team with the COP31 high-level champion, one word that our guidance that he shared with us was, let's maximize the efforts. Let's avoid reinventing the wheel. Let's put things into the move. So our work started exactly from where Brazil delivered last year with the new framework of the Global Climate Action Agenda. So this is, for us, the implementation thought. Is really to put the Global Climate Action Agenda into practice and deliver solutions to people. So this is another topic that is very close to the champion's heart, is the people-centered approach. And when we discuss people-centered approach, we discuss for sure business, we discuss job creation. We discuss economic growth, and not only economic growth purely, but really prosperity and wealth generation. So this is something that we are working, and the base for COP31 now is the champion announced, I think, at the beginning of June, during a Marrakesh partnership meeting in Istanbul, when the Global Zero Waste Forum took place. The Istanbul platform is the zero waste package for climate action. The Istanbul platform is like the connecting bridge throughout the 6 axes of the global climate action agenda. So we are not talking anymore about like axis 1 on industry, energy, and transport together or isolated from axis 4, which is resilient cities, axis 5. So we are working to put all the initiatives and passes and breakthroughs together and to maximize efforts, accelerate, and really bring this transition towards implementation together with the business sector. So thank you very much.
Super, Carlos, thank you so much. The message has been incredibly consistent and incredibly clear from the Turkey presidency and the climate champion team on this era of implementation. And it is a brilliant bridge language to really show how delivery continues to be the focus for what we need to bring forward. And with that, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to have a really meaningful 2-year runway into COP32. It's not often we have this in the global platform. So Your Excellency Hassan, coming in from the Ministry of Industry, knowing the importance of the partnerships with private sector and multi-state actors and the role that Ethiopia can play in the COP32 leadership, how do you see this unfolding and what are you hoping to bring into Addis Ababa in 2027?
Thank you so much, Professor. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It is a great honor and privilege for me, on behalf of the government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and particularly the Ministry of Industry, to address this distinguished gathering. Allow me to express my sincere appreciation to the organizers of this global industrialization, particularly UNIDO, for convening this important discussion as a such critical moment for our collective future. Thoroughly say that we need to work together to overcome the challenge we are facing as a world. Today, the global conversation is shifting from commitment to implementation. The question is no longer whether green industrialization is necessary, it is how we can accelerate it in a manner that is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. For developing economies, industrialization remains essential for economic transformation, job creation, poverty reduction, and resilience. At the same time, climate change requires that industrial growth follow the low carbon and the resource efficiency pattern. The opportunity before us is clear. Advancing development and climate action together. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for Ethiopia, industrial decarbonization is not only environmental imperative, it is national economic strategy. Under the leadership of His Excellency, our Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Ethiopia has integrated industrial growth, renewable energy, and climate resilience through initiatives such as climate resilience, green economy strategy, the Green Legacy Initiative, e-mobility programs, and the Make in Ethiopia movement as a list of industry. Today, Ethiopia benefits from one of the cleanest electricity systems in Africa, powered by predominantly by renewable energy sources, including hydropower, wind, solar, and geothermal energy. This provides a strong foundation for our low carbon manufacturing and a sustainable industrial development, while enhancing our competitiveness in an increasingly carbon conscious global economy. The theme of this panel discussion, decarbonization hub as the country partnership, closely reflects Ethiopia's own experience and aspirations. We believe industrial decarbonization hub can become powerful energies for transformation by bringing together clean energy, infrastructure, technology, finance, skills, development, and industrial production. Our industrial parks and special economic zones in Ethiopia are increasingly evolving into such hubs, promoting renewable energy, powered manufacturing, resource efficiency, innovation, and sustainable production systems. However, no country can achieve this transition alone. We need to come together, work together, face the challenges together. The scale of investment required and the urgency of climate action demand stronger international cooperation. Ethiopia therefore strongly support country partnership and models that align national priorities with international expertise, climate finance, private investment, because the private sector is very important here, and technological innovation. We welcome global initiatives that promotes coordinated action, recognize that sustainable transformation requires partnerships driven by national ownership and supported by international cooperation. As Ethiopia prepares after the COP32, we will advocate for stronger international cooperation and the green industrialization through inclusive climate finance, technology transfer, and investment in sustainable industries. We believe COP32 should deliver practical partnership that supports inclusive and low-carbon industrial growth, particularly in developing countries. To accelerate the delivery, three priority areas are particularly in the attention. First, we must increase investment in industrial decarbonization. Developing countries need predictable and affordable financing to support renewable energy, infrastructure, green manufacturing, clean technologies, sustainable transport system, and circular economy solutions. Second, we must accelerate technology transfer and knowledge sharing. Access to innovation, technical expertise, and industrial know-how is essential if developing countries are to successfully transition towards sustainable industrial system. Third, we must strengthen country-led partnership. The most successful partnership requires national ownership while leveraging global expertise and resources. Developing countries were not merely beneficiaries, they are active partners and contributors to global climate solutions. Ethiopia stands ready to play such a role. With our abundant renewable energy resource, expanding industrial base, strategic location, growing markets in Africa, 1.4 billion people, and a strong commitment to sustainable development. Ethiopia is well positioned to become a leading destination for green industrial investment in Africa. We invite governments, development partners, investors, and the industry leaders to join us building the next generation of low-carbon industrial ecosystem. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the green industrial transition presents one of the greatest economic opportunities of our generation. If managed effectively, it can create jobs, strengthen supply chains, and enhance competitiveness, improve energy security, and accelerate progress towards global climate goals. Achieving this vision requires moving just not ambition, from ambition to implementation, from fragmentation initiatives to integrated partnerships, and from commitment to measurable results. Ethiopia remains fully committed to working with all partners to advance fair, inclusive, and sustainable industrial future. Together, let us build industrialization decarbonization hub that serves as engine growth. Together, let us strengthen partnership that deliver tangible outcomes. We have to talk the walk. And together, let us transform green industrialization from a vision to a reality for the world, and particularly for developing countries like Africa. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It's already such a clear vision. I'd like to really have a huge round of thanks for our three tremendous leaders here. So we need those leadership on this agenda as well, because without that level of centralized leadership, this type of action implementation is hard. So a huge thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Stay cool.
Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. In the first panel, we already heard a lot about the fact that what's so exciting about the Green Industrialization Agenda is that there's this strong focus on growth, on development, on competitiveness, and also big emphasis from the last set of speakers on implementation, really shifting into that delivery frame. And this session focuses exactly on that. We're looking at industrial decarbonisation hubs and country partnerships, how to really scale delivery in emerging markets and developing economies. Over the last 2 years, we've seen an increasing number of initiatives focused on this question of how do we accelerate industry transition in developing country settings. We've seen the emergence of the Climate Club's global matchmaking platform implemented by UNIDO, the Climate Investment Fund's Industry Decarbonisation Program, where we recently had a really exciting announcement of funding for Mexico and for Brazil for industry decarbonisation. And then we've seen a whole suite of different country bilateral focused efforts. So we've had the India-Sweden Industry Transition Partnership, the Brazil-UK hubs, which we'll hear about in this session. The Industry Transition Accelerators have had dedicated country work programs also focused on India and Brazil. And we've seen country platforms being adapted for industry decarb specifically, for example, the EBRD's work in Turkey on the Industrial Decarbonisation Investment Platform. So lots of different models for how to start to think about how we actually move things forward in developing countries. And COP30, excitingly, we saw Germany, the UK government and the Global Industry Hub come together to launch the Industrial Decarb Hub Accelerator, which really aims to scale these models to learn from what's happened to date and really see these rolled out in a new set of countries. So in light of that, we wanted to use this panel to take stock of these experiences, explore how they've been working to date, draw on lessons from these existing initiatives, and really look at kind of practical challenges and opportunities in moving from the kind of high-level commitment space that we're all very used to, but where we really want to see that those project pipelines delivered at scale and everything that comes into that. With a great lineup of speakers, and many of them, which again represents just how many initiatives there are in this space. So we've split the panel into two sets, and we're going to start with a set of speakers who are going to talk about recent work, reflections, and lessons, and then move into a second panel focused more on delivery and collaboration going forward. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Arthur Borretto, Director of the Department of Decarbonisation and Green Finance, Ministry of Development, Industry, Trade and Services for Brazil, who is going to talk to us about the UK-Brazil hubs experience. And specifically, one of the exciting aspects of the hubs experience in Brazil is this connection between national strategic priorities and international investment. And so we were hoping you could tell us some more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here today. As you mentioned, in Brazil, for the past few years, we've been developing our industrial decarbonization hub. And I would like to highlight three main axes that we have been focusing on the last few years. Firstly, we have developed the Industrial Decarbonization Incubator that was launched on the COP30. And this incubator has 6 main sectors as a focus: iron, steel, cement, chemicals, glass, pulp and paper, and aluminum. Besides this incubator, we actually also have a project preparation and finance axis that have been preparing some projects for the BIP, which is a investment platform for climate in Brazil. Initially, we have been through a process through which more than 40 projects have applied
and we selected 10 projects, and now we have more than 4 projects in a final investment decision. So it is a very good perspective, and we hope that we can keep on this project as well. And as the final focus for the hub that I would like to highlight, we have the policymaking axis that basically helps Brazil to create national policies for decarbonize our industry. In this sense, I would like also to highlight that we have launched through the help from the UK and through the help from the UNIDO side as well, our national strategy for industrial decarbonization last week. Basically, this strategy is based on 4 pillars. We have the first pillar, which is the pillar of development, research, innovation, and capacity building. We have the second pillar, which is the pillar of feedstock, which is the pillar of decarbonized feedstock. The third pillar, which is the pillar of stimulating demand for low carbon products. And the final pillar, which is the pillar of financing and incentives. I think that the ID Hub, which is the short form that we call the Industrial Decarbonization Hub, it is a very important initiative in Brazil because we do not decarbonize industry alone. We need multilateralism, we need bilateralism as well. And I think that in Brazil, we are trying now to use positive environmental aspects as a competitiveness fact to decarbonize our industry. So I think that we have achieved so many good aspects through the ID Hub, and I hope that we can keep going with this amazing initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adil. We are going to go from the Brazilian government perspective to the UK government perspective on the hubs. And I want to pass over to Paul Durant, Head of International Demand Sector Transition in the Department of Energy Security Net Zero. And Paul, again, we've been hearing about this question of kind of reflecting national priorities within the hubs model. The hubs model is often seen as one which allows us to move from these plans to actually seeing delivery. So I'd like to hear from you how you're seeing the model unlock investment and turning those national decarbonisation ambitions into bankable projects.
Yeah, thanks very much. And it's great to hear Arthur describing how effective and useful it's been in Brazil. And that's very much our perspective as well. I mean, let me unpack slightly what the model has been and aspire to see this happen in other countries too. So, I mean, it's been fantastic to partner with the Brazilian government on this, and it's been a sort of multi-ministry effort between Ministry of Arthur and his colleagues, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Finance, and a lot of this underpinned by the excellent work that you've been doing. It's Brazil. The hubs model is about creating a country-led platform that brings together multiple different. It's about bringing together policy, technical assistance, finance in one holistic whole, and all with the common objective of trying to drive delivery. A common problem in every government, certainly basis of the UK government, is this sort of fragmentation, and the hub helps bring together the different strands that are necessary for anything to try and drive a transition such as this. What's particularly important is its focus on building a credible pipeline of projects and getting the sequencing right. So for support to move from early stage ideas through to opportunities to meet with and secure investor engagement, understand their perspectives and their needs, and then ultimately to securing financing. The other critical principle here is it's got to be driven by the country that's making transition. So Brazil's own priorities are at the heart of the hub model. Be that around industrial decarbonisation or hydrogen, combination of government industry to do that. So what we did with the hub was to try and coordinate the technical assistance and the financial support to move projects along that development. Early concept all the way through to final investment decision to deployment. The hubs has also been able to provide us a single entry for a host of partners that are necessary to drive transition. So that's donors, sure, but development, finance, and private sector actors all work together within this framework. And as you've heard, I mean, it really has been results, and it's thanks to the enthusiasm and commitment because of the government on this. So one of our early flagship achievements was helping Brazil, supporting Brazil to be the first and top-ranked project receiving climate investment fund industry decarbonization program funding, 250 million pound concessional finance investment that is set to leverage 2.5 billion to 3 billion, that sort of order of magnitude, and that's sufficient money to really start making a difference. You know, if we think that transitions operate on an S-curve, this is about turning that to sport. It's about building enough of critical mass that hopefully you can then accelerate see much more extremely point. We're also seeing value in blending different types of finance, finding grants, concessional finance, private capital to essentially to improve that risk return profile of investment. The hubs have identified a robust pipeline of 15 transformation and industrial decarbonisation projects and low emission hydrogen projects. We've actually got 2 hubs in operation, two actually starting to come together, one on industrial decarbonisation, the other on hydrogen. As Rana was saying in the earlier presentation, this is about green industrialization. It's not about industrial decarbonisation, it's about growing the green industries that we need for the future. Other things highlighted under the GCPA, so the Global Clean Power Alliance finance mission, partnering between GCPA finance mission and the hubs to develop a project preparation facility to strengthen that pipeline of banking projects and ultimately put them on the right track to investment. It's been a success in Brazil. I think I made that very clear, and see this as the model where.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm going to stick with Brazil for the moment. Come to the IU last. Stefania Relva, Director of Industry and Energy Transition at Institute of. I'd love to hear your perspective. We've been talking about the ID hubs model in Brazil, and obviously as a think tank and government partner, we've also heard about the importance of partnership in this and the different ways in which, you know, those national sectoral plans, those priorities are kind of laid out. So yeah, your perspective on the ID hubs, you know, slightly adjacent to government and your sense from working with industry stakeholders, policymakers, international partners on this. What have you learned about what makes a successful pathway for decarbonising heavy industries?
Yeah, we have been working together in different fronts. I think that this question has 2 main answers. The first one is understanding that decarbonization of industry and reindustrialization, it's a systemic issue. We cannot simplify this as just getting access to technology or getting access to energy. It's not only about that. And that's why I'm a huge fan of the way that the National Strategy for Industry Decarbonization was defined with these 4 pillars. Because if we took take these 4 pillars, we have the first one that is the inputs, the decarbonization inputs. So we are dealing with the upstream of the supply chain, ensuring, and we are calling it decarbonization inputs because it's not only about energy. It's about, for instance, having available scrap for industry, having a high quality iron ore, having biomass available, having a lot of residues. So there are a lot of inputs here that we need to put in this industry. And then we have the other pillar, that is the demand pillar, that focus on the downstream of this ecosystem. So it's not only, it's having the inputs is not enough if you do not have the market for these products that we are going to produce with these inputs. And for all of that, we need to have financing this entire ecosystem. So that's also so important, having a financing pillar. And since we were going to need to change a lot of technologies and a lot of process, we need to develop technology and capacity. So that's why you have the fourth pillar. So I think the strategy embraces this complexity. During the process of creating the ENGIE, which is the name that we call it in Portuguese, we defined it and we listed a lot of actions. And we also noticed that a lot of these actions requires engagement with other parts of the government as well. So I feel that the Ministry of Industry is very engaged also in having these connections with Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment. So it's a systemic process. And the second part of my answer is, at the same time, it's also a specific, because for each industry, you need to address specific challenges. In this sense, one example, we have been developing under a UK-backed project, also a partnership with UK. We have developed a model. We model the entire steel sector in Brazil. But we took into the consideration each region of Brazil because we have different profiles of steel companies in different regions with different availabilities of the inputs and the technologies that are used. So we model the entire steel industry in Brazil together with the industry. And that was very important point because if we do not have the industry on board of this process, if they do not trust on the model, if they don't know where this data is coming from, if they do not validate the data, it's very difficult to use this kind of model to support the public policy in a way that the industry will be also engaged in all that. So I think that's the main first points.
Thank you, Stefania. I'm going to pass over to Peter Levi now, Head of Technology Supply Chain Unit at the IEA. So we've focused a bit on this kind of hubs model, and obviously the IEA has published a lot of fantastic work recently also on specifically what kind of financial tools do we need in developing country settings, how do we support this transition? I was wondering if I could ask you what that recent work shows us about opportunities for industrial decarb based on competitive advantages. We've been hearing a bit about that framing today, and the opportunities for countries to collaborate even within that competition. And maybe just to tag something on, we've focused on kind of the UK-Brazil hubs experience, and we've been hearing about the desire to replicate that elsewhere. I'd love to also get your perspective on how, what you see in terms of based on the research you've been doing, how replicable that is and how you see that kind of scaling the context.
Thank you very much, Jan, and thank you to EQG and to UNIDO for the invitation to the UK government for the collaboration on several editions now of the Breakthrough Agenda report, which we'll be talking about later, which, as I understand, will be kind of an important feed into the aspects of the GGIA work, and also for the collaboration with the GCPA that Paul mentioned. I will resist my kind of IEA urge to put numbers to everything, but I will try and drop in a few numbers from this recent analysis that Jan has mentioned. And we're hearing loud and clear from everyone who's spoken this morning that this kind of a confluence of emissions mitigation and economic opportunity is really what this green industrialization frame is all about. And we have quantified aspects of this in our scenario modeling work, which I think you'll be familiar with. Just to pull out one number from that, in our net zero emissions by 2050 scenario that follows with near zero emission technologies for cement, steel, some of the sectors that we're focusing on in heavy industries. Were those markets to be segmented, the production of those materials via those process routes would be worth a combined market of around $450 billion by 2035. So this is not pie in the sky far off 2100. This is something that is a plausible but narrow pathway where really sizable markets that have been talked about today could be created. But of course, there's the reality check element to all of this, and this is where our work project pipeline tracking. We are doing kind of individual facility level tracking of how these near zero emission projects are actually going. And of course, the message there is not quite as positive as the model scenario projections of the net zero emissions by 2050 scenario. If we look at the full project pipeline, we're looking at only about 20% of that NZE figure by 2035 being realized if all those projects came off and if they were all meeting their milestones. And only a small percentage of those for steel have reached FID. The numbers are even smaller for cement, around 8% of NZE 2035. But I think coming to the other theme that's very present in this panel, besides hubs and the collaboration dimension, is around partnerships. And the IEA has been doing quite a lot of work on this partnerships topic, and really trying to, again, bring some numbers and some concrete examples to what these partnership models could look like. I'll share one from our work that we did actually on the topic of stepping up the value chain. I believe many synergies and messaging with the Green Industrialization Agenda and the themes we're discussing today. We provided this as an input to South Africa's G20 presidency. This in the steel industry, one of the kind of partnership models that we explored analytically was decoupling certain aspects of supply chains such that different countries can place these kind of comparative advantages and really leverage those. Steel as an example, decoupling the ironmaking step, the most energy intensive step in that process, from the final steelmaking conversion step, could offer important opportunities for developing economies to take a step up the value chain, where the iron ore resources are present, where there's access to low cost clean electricity. South Africa, third biggest iron exporter in the world, behind Brazil at number 2. These countries have the access to the raw mineral resources and potentially clean, low cost energy. Put those together and get reduced iron in a clean way. And then on the other side of this partnership model, important win-wins for potentially high-cost regions for these processes to run with the iron-making step, but proximity to some of the markets, the downstream customer relationships in automotive industries in other countries. Putting those two kind of sides of that coming together, you get this win-win partnership model that could actually motivate some of this progress that has been called for, turning ambition to real projects and progress on the ground. I would just conclude with one quick remark on coming back to what are the enablers for this. I mean, we can make lots of scenarios at the IEA, we can model lots of things, but the policies and enabling mechanisms that we are also working on this topic, and that's really the nuts and bolts of getting this to happen, making these projects bankable and become reality. If I could highlight 3 important components of that. On the pull side of the equation, the aggregated demand pledges. This was mentioned in the first panel. The IEA has been supporting the Climate Club Secretariat in its global pledge for market creation. This kind of pulling these products onto the market and creating those premiums for bridging the cost gaps in the production side is very important. On the push side of the equation, so getting the supply online and enabling these first few projects, particularly the high-risk ones, targeted financial and technical assistance for these projects is very important, and particularly demonstrating them in the context where the big markets can be in the future, and particularly in PMPs. And then the third component, which I think is something we've done a lot of work on at the IEA and has fed into various initiatives represented here today, is the enabling conditions for all of that. One of them is an agreement on standards. So if you cannot differentiate these markets in the first place, if you cannot differentiate one project from another in terms of its emissions performance, it's very difficult to kind of send a strong market signal, either on the pull side or on the push side. So really, I mean, leadership in agreeing and really committing to specific quantitative standards that can go in contracts, that can go in agreements between countries. This is a really important cross-cutting enabler. And then one final forthcoming plug for IEA work. we are working on this theme of competitiveness very intensively at the moment, and we're working on a report on this intersection of industrial decarb and competitiveness for some of the heavy industry sectors, and that's forthcoming. Launch date TBD, but we're well in the thick of the modelling and analysis. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Lisa. So that concludes the first part of this panel. Thank you, Arzo. We had, I think this is a really excellent way of exploring an example of something that's already kind of bearing fruit in terms of the UK-Brazil ID hub and sort of where this is going, and the analysis that lots of us are excited about, that there's this potential for these kind of win-win partnerships. It still feels more theoretical, right? So the question of kind of how do we actually deliver on that, but hearing great research on those enabling factors. So we're going to move from those lessons and insight into looking at delivery and collaboration going forward. And I would ask Michael, Gaia, Abdurrahim, and Winston to come up to the stage. Great. Wonderful, thanks all. We're going to, we have been reflecting on things that have worked in the past. Now we're going over to a set of speakers who are looking more at the future and how we can kind of deliver and collaborate going forward. And I'm going to start with Gaia Williston from DQ Strategic Engagement Branch Head, Australia. We know that for Australia, this whole agenda is very exciting, both from a kind of competitiveness and growth perspective, and also from a kind of partnerships perspective in the region. And we'd love to hear from you about what you see as needed in terms of the benefits from these type of ID hubs and country platforms, to learn what works and where there are barriers to build alignment going forward. Yeah, if you could.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting us along. It's been a really good discussion so far. Great to hear from a diversity of different ideas. But I think we can see some themes starting to come through, and I wanted to pick up on one or two of them before I launch into answering your question. One is this conversation around certainty and providing as much certainty as possible, which I think we are really committed to and support. I think we also do need to acknowledge that we need to balance that with flexibility as well. This is an evolving industry base where our technologies are evolving, our knowledge about how to do it is evolving, our energy bases are evolving, and so we do need to be able to provide as much certainty as possible, but also be flexible to improve and learn and respond to those learnings as we go along. The other one is the point about achieving kind of multiple benefits and ensuring that our green industrial policies do that. So from our perspective, we always have in mind, both domestically, but also as we engage internationally, economic security, energy security, and net zero. You need to have all of those in order to achieve success and to bring your populations along as we go. In terms of hubs, something that we are very keen on, hubs and country platforms need to integrate also energy, infrastructure, industry, and finance to shift from isolated projects to scalable industrial ecosystems. And we find that, I come from our Ministry of Climate Change, Environment, Water, Energy and Water. We have industry department, we have a treasury, we also have a federated system. And so you need to be able to bring all of those policy levers together in order to achieve success and scale and credibility and so forth as well. But we are starting to see how this works in practice in Australia, including through our hydrogen hubs and our clean industrial precincts. We have those in areas like the Pilbara in Western Australia, Gladstone in Queensland, and Hunter Valley in New South Wales. Many of these have a long history of heavy industry presence. And we're clustering infrastructure and supply chains, and we're finding that helps reduce costs, it helps attract investment. And I think we can say that although every country's pathway is different, coordination does support scale. But we do need to be frank also about some things that are holding us back, and I think that this may resonate with others. We have project risk and we have financing gaps. And I think that applies also in emerging markets. We have mixed demand signals for green industrial products as well. And fragmentation across initiatives is also slowing delivery too. So a critical part of addressing this is ensuring country-led development-focused approaches and forging partnerships that are aligned with national priorities, that build local capacity, ensure domestic benefits in terms of job, investment, infrastructure, and also enable shared learning on what works in different contexts. And I think we do need to really acknowledge that these initiatives need to be country-led and nationally led. We're all different. All our countries are different. Our net zero pathways are different. Our financing models are different. And so we need to provide, I guess, at the international level, we can have great conversations about problem solving and sharing the solutions and sharing things that haven't worked as well. But we also need to be able to apply that to national circumstances as well. I wanted to also just highlight before I finish very quickly some work that we are doing that we're finding has been a really good example of scalable country partner delivery models. And that's the Australia-Korea Green Economy Agreement. And this demonstrates to us how you can translate cooperation into implementation, into delivery, into the practical, including investment, technology deployment, supply chain development, and start doing that at scale. We're finding it's an opportunity for Australia and Korea to accelerate cooperation bilaterally. Of course, it builds into the broader foreign policy objectives as well, but also to look at increasing and scaling up clean energy trade, building green industries such as iron and steel, hydrogen, carbon liquid fuels, and so forth. And this stronger coordination means that we can link efforts into a more coherent ecosystem of initiatives that is less fragmented and where you have alignment on standards, on partnerships, on finance, and hopefully that helps us to contribute to scaling the global impact. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you, Gaia. Really great to hear those tangible examples of what's working and what isn't, and you're seeing how that translates into the hubs and partnerships approach. I'm going to turn this into here now to Abdurrahim Darwish, Head of the Department for Climate Mitigation Policies, Ministry of Environment, Urbanisation and Climate Change. So obviously we've just recently seen the kind of priorities in terms of COP31, and green industrialization is a key aspect there. So we'd love to hear from you about how do industrial decarbonisation hubs and country platforms align with the COP31 presidency's targets and priorities.
Thank you, Anna. First of all, thank you for inviting us this panel to share our vision for our approach for the country platforms and climate hubs. First, I would like to start with my experience over experience with the climate policy development. Before ratification, Turkey's ratification of the Paris Agreement, Turkey signed a memorandum of understanding with the IFI, International Finance Institution, to mobilize climate finance to those sectors. During this process, at that time, I was working for the Ministry of Industry and Technology. We were requested to project annexed to this mode. So when we get but we don't have any project at hand prepared. So this is the gaps in emerging market and developing economies. So I think the best of this gap is the country-led platforms. So through country-led platforms, they provide developing project pipeline, coordination between government institutions and MDBs, IFIs, also private sectors, then channel the finance to the right projects. So a good example from Turkey, last year, we are developing Turkey Industry Recovery Investment Platform. So this TTIP, we call EPRON this TTIP. Via TTIP, we would like to channel $5 billion until 2030. The Minister of Industry and Technology working with the EBRD, they established this platform. But until the establishment of the platform, the readiness of the country is very important. Turkey established this platform based on the low carbon tax base for the cement, steel, and fertilizer and aluminum sector development. Turkey first developed this low carbon tax base, set targeted policies for the decarbonization of the industrial sector. Based on this analytic and political work, we established the TTIP. So now I would like to turn to the action agenda. As we during the process, we firstly defined and our priority areas, collaboration with Australia, all the Brazil, and also with the Azerbaijan, with our stakeholder. One of the main areas under the action agenda, as you know, is the industrialization. So, if you would like to echo what is the State of Secretary, His Excellency Flash said. Now, this focus has been shifting from the energy sector, from the gas sector. For the energy sector, there is major technologies. If you have, maybe it's a controversial, if you have nuclear power as a basic power for power sector, but also you have the renewable energy. We can decarbonize in this power sector. But now, demand sector, industry, especially industry, is a bit complex. There's a low temperature process, high temperature process, also process emission. So now for the climate action, for the mitigation side, the focus of the shift from the power sector to the industry sector. So that's why we put the industry sector under the our action agenda. Now we are collaborating with our stakeholders, all stakeholders. What subtopics we would like to address under our action agenda. So the country platforms will be one of our subtopics under our action agenda. So we start with how can we handle these topics under how do we handle this topic during the COP process, and what we achieve at the concrete outcome at COP31. So we are working with the climate club, as you know, we are co-chair climate club. We've been working with the OECD, UNIDO, and other stakeholders, also domestic stakeholders. But the last thing, so I think the country platform is a very good tool, but I think it's not enough. So before, as I said, from Turkish experience, before establishing country platform, the readiness of the country is important. So developing policies, political buying, etc. So for this reason, also we as a COP31 presidency, we launched an initiative, climate implementation bridge to balance whole cycle from the development of the policies and development of the project pipelines and consistent finance. So actually, now we are working on this initiative. There are three pillars of this initiative. One is the diagnosis of the country, what the country needs. Second is the project preparation, project preparation. Third is the access to finance. So also we launched this initiative, and we are working with our aim is to announce this. Our aim is to these initiatives will be one of the main outcomes of COP31. So thank you.
Thank you, Abdari. really interesting to hear those points about, yeah, capacity in the country. We often talk about it being country-led, having that plan in place, and actually the actual project readiness being a really critical factor. So we've had a lot already today from different government stakeholders and think tanks, etc., about the importance of private sector engagement on this and bringing in the industry sector. So I'm going to pass over to Winston Back now, Vice President, Group Government and Public Affairs, Head of Wet Materials. And we'd love to hear from you about your specific experiences in terms of actually getting some of these low carbon cement and concrete projects off the ground in emerging markets, developing economies. From your experience, what's actually required to make these a success? And then how does that feed into this question of the government role in these types of country platforms, industry decarbonisation hubs, partnerships? What would you like to see more of going forward in space?
Yes, thank you very much. And great to be here. We are actually present both in Turkey and in Australia, so it's a great honor for us. First of all, I think public and private partnerships are absolutely critical to move us forward in the transformation. A lot of these new technologies we need to implement also mean that we need to develop completely new value chains. In order to do that, we need the support of the governments, especially when it comes, for example, to infrastructure rollout. One maybe demand at the beginning is let's stop with all these new ambitions and ledgers, but let's really focus on implementation and make sure that 2030 becomes a decade of mass deployment, right? Because if we want to achieve the climate targets we have set, that's what we need. We need actions on the ground, and we don't need additional actions. The good news is, I think that industry is committed, and that we want to transform, and we want to do it in a way that we are competitive and that we can actually create a green growth. And I think we have already good examples. We want to reduce our CO2. We are one of the biggest cement and concrete producer outside China. Globally, we are in 52 markets. We want to reduce our own footprint by 50% by 2030, and we are on a good track. We have good examples in traditional decarbonization levers, which are also implemented in the emerging countries, and on the deep decarbonization technologies, breakthrough technologies like CCUS. So we have started the first CCS plant in the cement world in June in Norway, where we are capturing 400,000 tons of CO2 every year and store it permanently underground. This initiative was only possible because we had a very close engagement with the Norwegian government. We have a financial investment decision for a full-scale facility in the UK, which is part of a hub, part of a cluster. Again, very close coordination with the government and with the other industries around the area, because we mutually need to use the same infrastructure. Again, public-private partnership was absolutely critical. And then we are also moving on the other technologies, like, for example, replacing limestone, which is the CO2 heavy part of the cement, with some calcium clay. And we have just in last year also started the biggest flash outliner for clay in Ghana, which is producing 400,000 tons of clay, which can reduce the CO2 footprint of cement by 40%. And we are now working on commercializing that product on the ground. I think it's very important to focus on emerging countries. The demand for cement and concrete will only grow in the future. 80% of that demand increase will be in emerging countries. And there, I think we need to work really on three main things. Some of that was already mentioned by the colleague, for example, from the IEA. One of them is really public procurement and procurement in general. There are yet no emission reduction schemes in these countries. There's very little incentives for our customers to buy these products. They might have a bit of change in terms of how they are being used, or they have a change in color. If we display the cement is not gray, it's pink, and that holds back some of the customers to actually use these products, even though they have better performance proficiency. So it's really important to inform, to educate, and also to have government schemes to procure these products. 30% of our products coming into public works, so the government itself can really take the leadership role here. The other point is indeed standards and the building codes. A lot of these standards are outdated, and they don't even allow us to put these new products in the market. So standards need to become performance-based, and they need to be updated much more regular. And maybe the last point is really that we also need to think about the commercialization of these products and thinking about new ways to do that. I think here at the London Climate Week, a lot of discussion is on carbon credits and also on environment attribute certificates, booking claim. And I think for heavy building materials, where the deep decarbonization technologies are growing incrementally in certain regions, these booking claim systems really help us to create markets, also in areas where the decarbonization technologies are not yet scaled, meaning that we could, for example, produce these cements then also in emerging countries, even though we don't have the market there, we have the market somewhere else where the customer is willing to pay the green premium.
Thank you. That was great to hear a really concrete example of what's happening now and what you need to practice. Thank you. Last but not least, I'm going to pass over to Michael Apicelli, head of the Climate Club Secretariat. You guys have recently been doing some work on thinking about country platforms for the industry space. So we'd love for you to share some examples of what you're seeing could work in terms of enabling country platforms for green industrialization and how to do that.
Thanks a lot, Johanna. What a pleasure to be here with, our sort of COP31 team, which is really starting to, I think, generate a lot of promise towards positive outcomes this year, and to be lucky enough to hear the industry perspective as well. I was just sort of thinking, how are we doing, right? How's it going? It's I just came from Paris earlier this week, where the Climate Club is headquartered, where we had a 41-degree day today. I got to hear from my family about how they're coping with that. I think somebody earlier today mentioned that today is the warmest day on record in June ever in London. So from that perspective, I think we have a lot of work to do. The other question that I was thinking about when I'm thinking about how we're doing and sort of addressing this international cooperation piece and thinking about how we can all row in the same direction is that industrial decarbonization, at the end of the day, it's about the promise of improving lives. It's about addressing the twin threat of climate change, while at the same time generating economic prosperity and opportunity. Are we sharing equally in that space? I think when you look at the gap, so to speak, between some countries that have a not a great debt to GDP ratio, let's say, for example, that still manage to get the access to capital that's needed to bring a lot of these projects forward, versus the much greater challenges that you might see in the developing. So I think that the problem set is pretty clear out there when it comes to addressing it. So what is the Climate Club doing in this space? Well, we know that we're going to need from our IEA friends $500 billion of direct investment in just concrete, cement, and steel alone by 2035. That's a 25-fold increase over levels. And we know that, in contrast to this, maybe creating this sort of paradoxical relationship, 2/3 of that investment needs to be in the emerging and developing markets, right? The very places that have the most trouble right now accessing capital, no matter how sort of responsible they've shown their track record. So obviously, in order to get there, we need to leverage finance from all sources: public, private, international, domestic, and they need to be deployed strategically. What does that mean? In the Climate Club, we are addressing this problem through mapping financial and technical assistance for industrial decarbonization, through our finance toolkit, which was first published in 2025 and just got its refresh this year. And we also have worked with the Global Matchmaking Platform, which is of course headquartered in UNIDO, as I think Rana mentioned earlier today. And it's a key delivery instrument that helps countries in identifying and accessing relevant technical and financial support. So to facilitate the flow of finance to industrial products in the global south, we need to target the following, or pull on, I should say, the following levers: access to finance, project banking, mobilization, private capital, and scaling and replication. And I think we've heard, throughout the panels today, the steps that need to be taken, whether it's, these procurement pledges, whether it is, de-risking capital. The options are all out there. The solutions are out there. This isn't an issue of not knowing how to accomplish what we need to do. It's more a question of finding, as I think some have pointed out, earlier in the week, the political will to do so. And that really is where the Climate Club, yes, it's a club, but it's a club that's an inclusive club. We want everybody participating. We want everybody getting their policy perspectives in. We are now at 50 members. Ethiopia as our most recent. And we know that when we are all sort of holding these high-level discussions and dialogues, and when we're committing ourselves to working with our COP presidency, that we're going to enable an outcome that will meet these challenges. We are leveraging, of course, the fantastic analysis that we get from our OECD and our IEA colleagues, and we are translating those policy recommendations into action through the global matchmaking platform. And we are asking everybody, all of our members, to, of course, be vocal in how they work with us. And we are doing all of this in the service of coming up with some fantastic outcomes in COP31 this year, which I'm very confident about, and look forward to engaging with all of you throughout the week and throughout the year. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. I think that was a great way to close, leaving us with a sense of, the consistency of what people have been bringing to the table. I think we've heard throughout all of the sessions today about the importance of actually shifting into delivery, start finishing. But I'd like everyone to think about, we've only got a number of months now until COP21. So what are we actually going to see landed at that point? Massive thank you to all of the speakers from this and the part A of this panel. It was great to have everyone on board. Thank you also to our partners, UNIDO and the UK government for cooperating on this event. And I hope everyone can still grab a coffee, talk to each other, figure out how we're going to move into that delivery and implementation phase. And great to see everyone. Bye.